Hi everyone, this is Steve. Welcome back to Scale Model Kit Review. In this video I continue to build the Agora Models, the Terminator T-800. I am on pack number 3. Now this is the full video for pack 3, which includes stages 21 through 30. So if you haven't done so already, head over to Agora Models and subscribe to this kit today. It's half scale and it's fantastic. It's huge. Just can't describe. I just finished up with all of pack 4. Wow, it's a beauty. So let's get started.
Phased plasma rifle in the 40-watt range. Uzi 9mm. I'll be back.
Welcome back. Let's look at the magazine for pack 3 of the Terminator T-800. Now remember, when you receive each pack, you'll receive 10 stages per pack. So we're going to concentrate on pack 21 in this video. However, I'd like to go ahead and show you the magazine. I'm going to skip over the other stages. We'll look at stage 21 and then we'll look at the rest of the magazine. So if you haven't done so already, head over to Agora Models and subscribe to this kit today. It's fantastic, half scale, it's huge. It's going to have a fantastic base, it's lighted, lots of moving parts. So right here you can see we start off right away with the table of contents, and it lists all the stages, stage 21 through stage 30. Okay, so like I said, we're going to look at stage 21 first. Here's all the parts that are included with stage 21. And we'll look at the assembly instructions here. Remember, with this you'll need some super glue, perhaps some tweezers, and something to apply the super glue with. I would recommend some super glue accelerator also. And remember, you do get this magazine with this, so that makes it very nice too. They do give you some expert tips. There's a note here about making sure that the cables are all accessible from the back of the head. So we'll make sure we do that when we actually build this. So moving on, article here about AI, artificial intelligence, blending Kubrick's grim future vision with Spielberg's humanist sentiments. This bittersweet fable from two of cinema's leading filmmakers offers unprecedented exploration of love, life, and the human condition. So it's an article about AI. Pretty cool there. If you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend it. Came out in 2001, director Steven Spielberg, obviously. So we have about 4 pages of that. Then the next article is Alien. A young woman with a cat becomes the ultimate survivor of haunted house in space in Alien. So there's a couple pages of that. Remember, that movie came out back in 1979. And I remember going to the movie theater on base to watch this. And lastly, we have an article about the real-world science of the T-800. So the Turing test, can machines think? Well, it looks like that's coming true here, you know. So this is a good article there. I won't give away any of the specifics with it. So with that, let me go ahead and grab the parts out, and we'll look at stage 21. I'll be right back. Here's the parts contained within the blister pack. And in most of the parts that I've seen so far with this kit, everything comes in blister pack, which gives it nice protection. So there you have it there. But it's a good idea when you take these all out to go ahead and inventory these parts as compared to what should be found within the magazine. So let me take these out and we'll get a closer look. Here's a close-up of the parts. We received a right shoulder joint, and this is made out of metal. Very nice finish on that. We also received right shoulder joint fittings. These are made out of plastic. 2 of them there. lower jaw joint cover. That's these little covers there. They're on a little sprue tree. We received 2 large shafts and 2 smaller shafts. Now the larger shaft is called 21-3. That's the larger one right there. And the smaller shafts are called 21-4. Those are metal. And lastly, we received 3 PM2 by 4 millimeter screws. Okay, so these are 3 of them inside of there, and they're the PM screws, 2 by 4 millimeter screws. They do give us 1 spare, so always save your spares in case you need it later on. So let's get started. Before we get started, here's some recommended tools we can use to build this kit. Obviously you're going to need a good screwdriver. I recommend the Wera PHO screwdriver for that. It's magnetized and works great on the screws. I also recommend the glue looper, and this will help you apply your super glue to specific points. You can kind of see how that is. And I do recommend a really good pair of sprue cutters. These are the Tamiya ones. And you know, if you're going to invest this much money into these model kits, you should get really good tools for this, not the old cheapo tools. A good quality tool will help make your build even much more enjoyable and a lot easier. And besides that, you'll have nice quality tools for future builds. I recommend a little solo cup thing here to put your super glue onto, and then this Gorilla Glue is really nice here, the super glue. I recommend that. And lastly, to accelerate the super glue, use some super glue accelerator, and we call that kicker, so I recommend that also. And remember, you can find all those tools on my Amazon store. I put a link in the description below. So I'll go ahead and pour some super glue out here in the tray. Just a little bit. And they tell us they want us to dry fit these. So you have one of these gear assemblies that goes on one side, and just kind of test fit it, make sure it fits in good. You also have another one for the other side, so we actually got to super glue both of these on. And apply the super glue to the circles. It just makes it a lot easier. So it's good to get restarted on this. It was fun building pack 1 and pack 2. This pack 3 looks super exciting to do. And we'll just slide that down in there. Turn it over. We'll do the same thing on the other side. This kit uses a lot of super glue, so make sure you have a good supply. Fits down in there just like that. Now we can go ahead and take a little bit of kicker, the accelerator, and spray it in there. Capillary action puts it in behind it, and just a second or two, the super glue is nice and dry. Take a paper towel, wipe off the excess, and there you have it. Looks good on both sides. The next step that they want us to do is they want us to cut these 2 covers off and get those ready for installation. They show using an X-Acto knife. I'd rather use my sprue cutters here, these really good Tamiya ones. And there we go. So those are both off. Alright, so these covers are for the jaw, and they go on both sides here. And we once again we have to super glue these parts. And they just want us to apply the glue. Okay, so they want us to put some glue on these tabs here. And we'll put it down in there. There's one. Turn it around to the other side. And it might be just as easy to put the glue on the inside. Right there. And right there. And there we go. That is in there. Take a little bit of accelerator. Doesn't take much. Same with the other side. And it should dry within seconds. Wipe off excess. And we're done with that. Alright, so we've completed all the way up to step 7. Now we're on step 8. Step 8, we take the top of the head here, and we're going to insert those the larger metal shafts on the top here. Now they tell us to go ahead and test fit them first, make sure they go in fine, and mine do. I've already done that. They both fit in just fine. So we'll pull that out. I'm going to put some super glue in there to hold them in place. We've got to put both in. Put some glue around the sides. And we'll do both sides. Okay. Take the metal shaft. Having tweezers really helps. Slide that one in. And slide the other one in. They say if it doesn't want to go in very well, you can use a file and file them down. I'm just going to put a little kicker on them. That is good. And those are secure. So the next step is they want us to put the smaller shafts in on the bottom here. And we just want to make sure that they test fit just fine. And let's see here. Just like that. That one does. And that one does. Okay. So once again, I'll put some super glue in those holes around the outer edge. And we'll slide those shafts in. There we go. Just like that. That's how they should look. Put a little accelerator on them, and that should be good. Okay, so the last step is they want us to put the top of the head on the bottom of the head. Okay, so we have that all there. Now if you'll notice where we put those shafts in, there's some mounting points down here. There's some holes here on the bottom for those screws, those 2x4 PM screws that we have. Okay, so we'll simply slide the head down, just like a puzzle, on both sides. Looks good. And then this is where we're going to install those smaller screws on the back side here. Those little fixing screws. And got one right there. Try to make it so you guys can see what I'm doing here on the other side. Make sure the other side's tightened down. And there we go. Making sure all our wiring is on the back side, which it is. And that's what that looks like right there. And that's all we do for stage 21. That was a lot of fun. I'm enjoying this greatly. Welcome back. Let's look at the instructions for stage 22. And as you can see here, stage 22 will connect the jaw and assemble the head. And we received a sprue tree here and a couple of parts, which we'll look at here a little closer. You'll need a cutting mat, some tweezers, a fine dressmaking pin or needle, some super glue of course, and then we'll need a head assembly from stage 21 and the faceplate assembly from stage 10. And as you can see here, we have just a few steps involved here. We're installing some of the actuator assemblies onto the face. There's some very fine pins that we'll be using here. That's what the tweezers are for. And they tell us we can use a needle to help line up the holes before we try to insert the pins. So with these pins, we got to be very careful that we don't drop them and lose them. Okay. And last few steps over here on the left side of the page here. You know, we're going to have a completed head here in a few minutes, so let me get these parts out and we'll get a closer look and we'll assemble this issue. I'll be right back. And here's how the parts are presented in the blister pack. I can tell there's some metal parts in here, and those very tiny pins are located back in here in a separate bag. So I'll go ahead and pull this out and we'll get a closer look. Here's a close-up of the parts. We received what they call the right shoulder. This is made out of metal. Very good there. And we received those jaw pins. There's 3 of them in the bag here. You just barely see them. They are pretty small. And I'll give you a screen capture of the parts here that are included as far as the right jaw and left jaw connectors. And with the screen capture you can see the part numbers and how they are associated there. Alright, let's get started. Here's a close-up of those pins. Now, after doing a little investigating with those pins, they must be aluminum and they're non-metallic. So here's my magnetized screwdriver, and notice they're not attracted to the screwdriver. So don't worry about having to use non-metallic tweezers or anything like that. Let me zoom out and show you some tweezers here. Here's a couple examples of tweezers you can use for this. Now you want to be very careful because if you put too much pressure on the part, it'll go flying off and you'll lose the part. But these are the Tamiya tweezers, very nice, heavy duty. They have a great tip on the end of them, and I highly recommend these tweezers here. Then you have what we call some non-metallic tweezers, and you can see they have a non-metallic end on it, which is necessary sometimes when you're handling metal parts that are attracted to metallic components. So found out those pins are not magnetized in any way, so we really don't need to use these tweezers here. Now you can find both of these types of tweezers in my Amazon store if you so choose to purchase yourself a set. Now for this next step, we're going to assemble, I believe it's the right hand jaw connectors. Now they tell us we may have to remove some of the material between the joints that we're going to be assembling, and the tool best used for that would be this Tamiya flat file, and it's from the basic set, so you can actually find this on my Amazon store and purchase this for yourself. And I'll show you how we're going to use this here in a second. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove 22.5 and 22.2. I'm going to use some good Tamiya sprue cutters to do that. Carefully cut it as close as we can. There we go. And we'll leave the other ones on until we're ready to assemble them. Just take and clean this up a little bit here. That looks good. And what they want us to do is put this together here, like this. Put that on top. And it actually goes together pretty well. Still want to kind of clean this up here, on here that might interfere. So I'm just going to file it down just a little bit there. Take just a little bit of the material off here, chrome plating. And a little bit off that too. Should be good. Then it goes in like that. We're going to go ahead and put these together, and it doesn't seem to be an issue with it going together or any of the holes lining up, but you can help yourself with the alignment with a pin here in a second. And I'm just going to put some yellow tack down to secure it to the yellow tack. Just like that. And I'm going to do the same with the other side. And it's just going to make it easier to get everything together here. And secure everything down there now that the pin is through it. Next, I'll take my little pin, not too much pressure on it, insert it into the hole. Just like that. And take my X-Acto knife here and push it through. There we go. And it is through. And that worked good. Using the yellow tack, you could use blue tack also if you want, but your pin needs to be flush on both sides, and we didn't lose it. Next we go to step 4, as we just completed step 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to actually install this jaw connector to the jaw here. Okay, so it's actually going to go just like that into the jaw. And we'll get a closer look here so you can see what's going on with that. Now on the jaw itself, there's a hole here on the underside, and there's a hole over here on the underside. So we're simply going to do a test fit here first. We're going to slide this in to those holes can see that, just like that. And then this will simply drop down into right there. It just drops right down into that. Okay. Now, I've already got it inserted, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is use my favorite super glue, Gorilla Glue super glue. This is awesome. It's a thick super glue. You can see that little dab there, and I'll use my glue looper to apply it right in there. That should be more than enough glue, and to make it easier, slide that in with my tweezers. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and use some super glue accelerator, or what I call kicker, and just spray a little bit on that joint, and that will help it to dry a little faster. I'll be right back with the next steps. Next, we'll go ahead and do steps 6, 7, and 8, which is the other side. So we're going to cut off 22.3 and 22.4. And these sprue cutters are the Tamiya ones. They are very nice. I recommend them. And you can find the super glue I was using and these in my Amazon store. I put a link in the description below. It just makes it so much easier to get these parts off. If you're going to invest this much money into these kits, why not have quality tools for that? And this is definitely a quality tool. And I'll take my Tamiya file from the basic file set, smooth this off, take off some of the material, take off the chrome plating, you don't have to remove much of it, just to where you see some of the plating come off. Do the other side a little bit. And we'll do a test fit. That is good. Alright, now let's get my yellow tack out again. And I want to secure this down where I can best use it, probably on this side. Secure that there. Put some yellow tack on the other side. We'll line it up with a pin. There we go. And I'm going to squeeze down both sides with the yellow tack. The pin is lined up perfect. Alright, so we have our alignment going on there. We'll take our pin, drop it in, take my X-Acto blade again, squeeze it through. Perfect. And we have movement, and the pin is inserted all the way evenly on both sides. A little bit there. There we go. Make it flush on both sides, and we are good. Now we insert it on the skull, just like we did before. just like this side. We're going to flip this over and we're going to insert it on the other side. Remember, we have those two holes that we have to go into. Right there and right there. And then we got those in, and then it inserts right there into the jaw. Get my glue looper, a super glue. Right there. Apply the super glue to that point right there. And we'll move the actuator rod over to it. And there we go. All in. Take my super glue accelerator, my kicker, and spray it. And that should be good. And we have both our actuator rods. We have both actuator rods assemblies hooked up. Jaw still moves. Perfect. Let's move on to the next step. And before we do the next step, I like to keep my bench as clean as possible so I don't lose any parts. So that extra pin, I don't know if we're going to need it later on, but I went ahead and in my little pill box, which you can find on my Amazon store, I put it in here with all the extra parts that I have. And you can see I've been saving all the screws in here, so everything is nicely marked. We have a lot of different size PM screws, a lot of different sized PB screws, some KB screws, and PWB screws and so forth, KMs and such. So this is really handy to keep all your screws in. You'll find a link in the description below on how you can find these. They're not very expensive. So, and the final step is step 9 and 10. We simply put the face plate on finally, and it just inserts into a keyway right here on this side and a keyway on this side over here. Slide in. And it should be snug, which it is. And we don't have to glue it just yet. And that looks good there and there. And we still have the back part we need to put on a little bit later. Our wiring for the motors, for the jaw and such. And that completes stage 22. We're not going to use this little shoulder piece just yet. That will be later on. But it was thoroughly enjoyable to install these actuators here. Fiddly parts. You have to be very careful. And as you saw in my video, it worked out very well. And we also put the faceplate on. And it's nice and snug. It's not glued down, and that's looks fantastic. It really looks pretty evil there. And you can just see how big this is by my hand. Welcome back. Let's look at the instructions for stage 23. So here's our parts listed for stage 23. Looks like we assemble the right shoulder joint, and we just have a couple parts issued with this. And we'll look at the steps here involved. Looks like we use that joint from stage 22 in this build, and we have a total of 5 steps to do here, all completed here on the lower right. So let me get the parts out and I'll be right back. Here's the parts for stage 23 inside of the blister pack here. Definitely is metal, as it has some weight to it. And I'll pull these out. We will get a closer look at all the parts. Here's a close-up of the parts. We received the right shoulder joints, 2 parts, an inner side and an outer side. We received 3 PM 3x6mm screws. And one of those is a spare. We'll put it aside. So let's get started. Step 1, we need to gather a couple parts from previous stages, and we will need the right shoulder assembly from stage 21. That's this right here. We had it put aside. And we also need the other part of the shoulder assembly from stage 22. So for step 2, we're going to insert the inner shoulder joint into the shoulder, and they want to make sure it's oriented correctly. So you want to take your part here and make sure you have your screw holes situated just like that. And you want to make sure the raised section internally here are vertical. So it's going to go straight down. Just like that. So you want to make sure that the raised section of these holes internally are vertical to the way this is situated, just like that. Next we flip this over. We'll bring in our shoulder part from stage 21. And it's simply going to go line up. We have some alignment tabs there, the smaller ones, right there. They're going to line up to that, just like that. And we will put our 2 PM screws, the 3x6mm screws in. And the screw holes are threaded, which makes it nice. And they just go in just like that. There's one. And we'll put the last one in. You can probably just see the threads there. They go in just very nicely. There you have it. And there we go, situated just like that. And that's all we do for stage 23. It was fun assembling this. Not much to assemble here, but it was a lot of fun, and make sure you pay attention to the instructions carefully. Welcome back. Let's look at the instructions for stage 24. Here's the parts for stage 24. Looks like we connect the right hand to the right arm. We have 6 steps on this side. We have to pay attention to the type of screws we use for this. Total of 14 steps here. So I'll go ahead and get these parts out and we'll get started. Here's the parts as they are presented. And definitely some weight here. This has to be metal. And we have screws here on the back side. I'll go ahead and take these out. We'll get a closer look. Here's a close-up of the parts for stage 24. And we receive the right shoulder plate itself. That's metal. And look at both sides here. We also receive the right hand ball joint, 2 sides to that. Right hand muscle connectors themselves. These are plastic, and so are the ball joints. They are plastic. 2 types of screws. We received some KB 2x6 screws and some PB 2x6 screws. The PB 2x6 screws are a recessed type of screw, and the other type are a button head type. I'll be right back. So for step one, we're going to assemble these ball joints here. We're going to use a countersunk PB 2x6 screw. You can see that there. Simply these two halves go together. Just like that. And we put our screw in right there. And that's pretty much that right there. Let's go over to step 3 because that was step 1 and 2 we just completed. We will need our hand from stage 15, and we're going to attach this to the hand itself. And there's one spot here. It's the largest spot that this will go onto. That will slide into there just like that. And then we'll put a screw in on the back side. That will be one of our KB screws, which is a button head screw. That screw right there is the button head screw. And if you look closely, there's a flat on both sides, so that way this doesn't turn when you're trying to put the screw into it. Reading the instructions a little bit further, they say to give you a little extra strength on this ball joint to apply some super glue to it before you put the screw in. And that is found in step 7, which is a little bit further along. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Gorilla Glue that I use all the time for this, and I'll show you the bottle here in a second. I'm going to put some glue around here and even in the threads, so it will give us some extra strength when we go to screw this down. So just as before, I want to make sure the opening is facing the palm of the hand, and then I'm going to put this down just like that. And now I'm going to go ahead and put my screw back in. And that should give us some extra strength on the ball joint. Okay, now our next step is to press fit the arm assembly that we put together looks like around stage 12, and this is going to be a press fit onto here. You can see firmly, and it just snaps right in just like that. Now let's look at the next step going on. Next they want us to do the same thing with these smaller parts of the arm here, these actuator rods. You can see they move in and out. And they're going to be press fit on the smaller ball joints. So do the first one here, just like that. That snaps in there. That one there. And one more. And there they all are fitted on. Pretty amazing with the engineering of this kit so far. I really like it. Now we have to install some connector parts for these tendons, these spring-loaded tendons here. We have some connector parts that go on these hands. Here are those connector parts, and I'm going to cut them off with my Tamiya cutters, sprue cutters. Separate them here. There's 2. We have 4 of these total. Now these will get glued to these openings right here on the bottom of the hand. Alright, next I'm going to take these tendons and pull them aside to show you what's happening here, where they need to go. And if you look on the bottom of the hand, there's some openings. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these tendons, one at a time, need to feed through those openings. And one right there. One right there. One right there. And one more. And one right there. Okay, so we have 4 of them fed through. You can see all 4 there. And now we have to put those end pieces on. Now the best part, I think I'm just going to take and dip it in the glue here. Super glue. And it goes in the spring tendon. Just like that. There's one right there. Just a little bit of glue on there. Just like that. Two more to do. I'll do the other 2 and I'll be right back. Next we have to glue those tabs on the bottom of the hand that represent the tendons. Take that tendon, apply some accelerator to it, and glue it down. And that should hold it in place. Once again, I'll put some super glue in that hole. And I'll put some accelerator on it. Gotta glue that down. 2 more to go. Super glue. Glue that down. Accelerator. A little more accelerator there. And the last one. Super glue. And a little bit of accelerator. And that should hold it in place. And there's all our tendons attached there. And that's all we do for stage 24. It was a lot of fun. Very fiddly here, attaching these tendons on the bottom of the hand. Having to use some super glue and all that. The super glue of choice for me here lately is this Gorilla Glue super glue. It's a little thicker and easy to use. I would also, for this stage, have yourself some of the accelerator for super glue. That way when you put the parts down, you can apply the super glue right away. You can actually use a small brush to apply the accelerator to that area, and it would make it a lot easier. Welcome back. Let's look at the instructions for stage 25. So for stage 25, we assemble the right shoulder. We have a lot of parts and pieces here that's involved. A lot of plastic pieces that we're going to be cutting off sprue trees, and quite a few screws here going on. We have the first 8 steps here involved with the shoulder assembly. Be using some super glue with this also, and you'll need some tweezers. Moving on, we have a total of 18 steps for this. We do have a pretty large spring that has to go in here also to keep everything together. So this is going to be fun. We're going to got a lot to do here. So stay tuned. I'll get the parts out and we'll get a closer look. Here's the parts as they are presented in the blister pack. There's a lot of parts in here. It's hard to see them all, including that large spring and a few screws. So I'll take these out and we'll get a closer look. Here's a close-up of the parts for stage 25. We do receive a large spring here, and of course that's made out of metal. And also this part right here, which is the right elbow pin, that's also made out of metal. Okay, so pretty surprisingly there, the elbow pin they call it. And we have a bunch of plastic parts here, and they call this the right shoulder accessories, and you can see both sides of that. And lastly, as far as parts go, we get the right shoulder accessories also. And 2 types of screws were issued. We received 3 PM 3x8 screws, and those are the longer ones there. And then we received 4 PM 3x6 screws, and those are the shorter screws that are right there. So the 8s and the 6. I'll be right back and we'll start this assembly. step one, we'll assemble the shoulder assembly. I am going to go ahead and use some super glue, the Gorilla super glue. Instructions don't say to use super glue, but I think it needs to be used. I'm just going to apply some across here. And it just simply goes right down on top of it, just like that. There we go. Straight down on top. And I'll take a little bit of accelerator, spray it in there, and that should help it dry. I'll be right back. Further along in the instructions, they tell us to identify these parts alphabetically. So we have A, B, C, D, and E. And we'll be assembling into the shoulder mechanism. Okay, I'll be attaching a lot of these accessories to this shoulder assembly, and I'm going to maintain, just as I did before, that this part here in the middle is configured to where your two screws are vertical along the path here. You got two screw here, holes here on the sides and one on the end. We want to maintain that vertical with the screws on the center. Now, these accessories will be sliding in place. I'm going to add some super glue. The instructions do say you can add super glue to where all these accessories go into. So I'm going to put the super glue in first with my looper. So I'm putting super glue in all of them because we're going to be doing all of them. Doing the other side. This side here. And on the very bottom. It's just going to keep those in place. So A goes on top. Next we have B. And I didn't put the glue in the right spot for B. B goes up here. So B goes like that. C goes over here on the end also. D goes on the bottom. And E goes over here on the end. Just like that. Once again, we're still maintaining that our two screws in the middle are vertical, and they still are. We're going to take our spring and put that in the middle. Okay, so next we have this cover plate. Now if you look here on the side, there's kind of a cutout on the side, and the cover plate has the same thing. You can just see it there. That's going to line up with this side, with this round circle part. So we're going to compress the spring. Make sure we got the spring where it needs to be, if you can see that. And we're going to compress this down to where it looks just like that. Okay, we're going to put in the PB 3x6 screws. Put one in there right now and screw it down. Here's one, and now we can do the other two. pretty cool how this all goes together. And that's all put together. So I like it. Pretty cool. So next we have this other accessory that has to go on the back side here. It simply goes along right here. And it needs to be super glued. Super glue on this peg and on that peg. And it will simply just line up with that. And to help it dry out, a little extra there. I'm going to shoot it with some accelerator, and capillary will pull it in place, and this will dry in place very quickly. So while that's drying, I'll just show you again how this looks. Remember that notch went on the circle part, and this is how all the accessories look on that. It's a pretty heavy piece here, the shoulder joint. Very good. Next we'll take the part from stage 23 and attach it to that shoulder joint, and you can see there's an alignment pin and 2 screw holes, and it's simply just going to go down just like that, and we're going to put our 3x8 screws in. They're the longer ones that came with this issue, and you can see the holes there, and simply going to screw 2 of them in. You can kind of see in there. And they are tight. You can see them both there. And lastly, we got one more part that needs to go in. It goes in right there where that hole is. It also will need to be super glued. This is the part right here that goes into that. There is an alignment tab on the bottom, and it's actually going to go just like that, where this arm is sticking towards the shoulder joint, just like that. And we'll put some super glue on this. Okay, I dipped it in my super glue. Now I'm just going to insert it in there. And I want it to be straight as possible. And I'm going to hit it with some accelerator, and that should dry up just fine. And that's all we do for stage 25. That was a blast building it. Very mechanical. That's the type of things I like to do with my background when I was in the Air Force working on C-130s. But this was a lot of fun. Welcome back. Let's look at the instructions for stage 26. And here's the instructions. Stage 26, we connect the right arm with the elbow joint. And here's the parts that we have with this issue. We have 6 steps over here on the right side. We will be using super glue once again with this part. That's why I recommend you getting a really good brand of super glue. And we have a total of 16 steps with this, so we're going to be assembling quite a bit here. So give me a chance to get these parts out, and I will be right back. Here's the parts as they are presented in the blister pack. And it does feel heavy, so we definitely have metal parts here, and that's what it looks like there. Looks like we get a little Allen wrench here, So let me get these parts out and we'll get a closer look. With stage 26 we received the following parts: the left shoulder, the right elbow part, two more right elbow parts. Those are plastic. This is plastic also. This is metal. A small cylinder, which looks to be aluminum. 3 washers and 2 different sets of screws. We received PM 3x10 screws, and that's the bigger ones. And then we received the PM 3x10 2x10 screws along with this Allen key. Let's get started. So step 1 and 2, we're going to be attaching these to the arm on both sides. But what they want us to do is take this plate off first. So we'll do that. And make sure we put the screws off safely somewhere so we don't lose them. And we'll remove that plate. And now they want us to glue those brackets in place. So in this case, I will be using my Gorilla Super Glue and my glue looper, and I'm going to put glue around these and drop them in. And first one, let me remove these screws so I don't lose them. Put those aside and put my glue in there. And drop our second one in. There we go. Now we'll move on to the next step. Step 5, they want us to put this small cylinder into that hole right there. And when I do, it fits very loosely. So they say we can go ahead and wait until step 10 before we put this in, which is what I'll do. Okay, next we're going to combine this with the arm, and note that there's 2 different ends on here. You have that arm there with that type of end right here, and then this one right here. This is the one we're going to work with first. Now remember, we took this apart here, and the reason why is we need to insert this in just like that into this tab right here. And then we need to put our arm back on. So just like that. So we'll get our screws out. Put our first screw back in. There's one, and we'll get the second one in. There we go. And then it looks like this goes in. Just like that. Into that joint. Something like that. And we'll take our arm. Make sure we have the larger size on top with the recess. And this is where we put our bushing back in. That's going to go in there. That bushing. We make sure we slide it in. Put our screw in. And we should be able to tighten it down now. That is in there. Now we take our part from stage 25. We're going to put it through this. And it is keyed. It has flat edges. So it only goes in one way. Make sure everything lines up here real quick. Just like that. We'll turn it over. We use the bigger 3x10 screw for this. Put a washer on it. Small washer. And that goes down right on top there. And this is an Allen wrench. Okay. And screw that down. And how tight we put it will allow it to adjust in or out. Allow everything to move. Back it off just a little more. There we go. Very nice. So that's how that moves. Arm articulates back and forth. Super cool there. And looks like we put a cover on this. And there's a couple alignment holes there for that. Just simply go down on that and get glued in place. Put some super glue on that one. And some super glue on that. And this will go down. Just like that. Perfect. Love it. And I think this is super cool. Everything articulates and moves around. Very cool there. This rotates. Elbow moves back and forth. Shoulder will move also when needed. There we go. And that completes stage 26. This was a lot of fun. Assembling all this together. Looks fantastic. Look at that arm. Look how big it is. It's huge. Welcome back. Let's look at the instructions for stage 27. And here we have stage 27. Here's the parts that came with this stage. We have 4 steps over here on the right. Looks like we're assembling another shoulder joint assembly, which is the left and right shoulders themselves. And then we have a total of 10 steps total. We're going to be using super glue in this. So let me get the parts out and I'll be right back. Here's the parts for stage 27, and they are nicely protected. I will go ahead and pull these out and we will get a closer look. Here's the parts. We have the left shoulder plate inserts, and we have a shoulder socket and shoulder socket cap. Let's get started. To start off this stage, we're going to install these inserts into the shoulder joint on both sides, and of course they are going to be super glued in place. And my preferred super glue is the Gorilla super glue. It's thicker and very nice. I'll be using my glue looper to apply the glue to these. So I'm simply going to put some glue in here. And we'll apply that down there, flip it over. We'll do the same on the other side. And that goes in just like that. And I'll take my super glue accelerator here and spray some accelerator on this. Capillary action will get it into where it needs to be, and we'll let that dry a bit. I'll be right back. Next, they want us to glue these two parts together here, and there's a couple of notches here, same with the other. Make sure all your parts are cleaned up as much as possible with this. I'm going to take that and just kind of clean it up a little bit. Not much sticking out. I got most of it cut off with the sprue cutters. And simply we're going to take some super glue and put a couple drops in there. There and there. That should hold it in place. And we'll put the cap on. And once again, I'll hit this with some accelerator. And there you have it. Next, we'll take our shoulder assembly that we previously assembled, and our little part that we glued together is actually going to go on just like that. Okay, same thing. We need to go ahead and glue this in place. It is a tight fit, which makes it nice. And I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the edge there. Because it is such a tight fit, it's going to spread it out. Make sure this part here is facing the top in the angle like I'm showing you, and spread it on. And we'll leave that to dry. I'm not going to put any accelerator on it. Looks good. And that completes stage 27. Had a lot of fun assembling this. We're making great progress on the arm and shoulder of the Terminator. It's fantastic. I've been enjoying this immensely. Welcome back. Let's look at the instructions for stage 28. And for stage 28, we continue assembly of the left and right shoulders. And here's all the parts we'll receive with this issue. We have 3 steps on the first page, and then we have a total of 8 steps. So we've got a lot to do here. Let me get the parts out, and I'll be right back. Here's the parts as they are presented in the blister pack for 28. And there's a lot in here. I'll go ahead and take it out, and we will get a closer look. Stage 28, we get the right shoulder plate, and that's made out of plastic. And we receive the left shoulder cog, the shoulder spring, the right shoulder cap and rod, right shoulder cap, there, and right shoulder tube, and 3 6mm PM screws. Let's get started. Step 1, we'll take our assembly from stage 27, and we're going to insert this tube inside this end here. If you'll give you a better view of it, this right here goes all the way through. So this tube is going to go through all the way, just like that. And then we'll put our shoulder plate assembly onto that, and that is going to go just like that. And then we take our rod and put that through, and should be able to slide that in. All the way through, and keep going all the way through. That is it there. Perfect. And we take our cap on the other side. Take our cap on the other side. It has some alignment pins, and that simply goes down on top. Did not say to glue. So I will not be gluing. And that is in all the way now. There we go. Okay. That took some coaxing. Next, for step 5 and 6, we'll assemble this cog on this shoulder piece here. Make sure the opening here, this large opening, is to the right. And we want to make sure we have our 2 raised surfaces for the screws, horizontal, and it's simply going to fall in just like that. Next we line up our part from stage 27, and the alignment tabs will line up just like that, and it goes on the outside obviously here, and we'll line that up just like that, and we'll put in our 2 screws for this, the 2 6mm PM screws, and that's where they go. One there. And next one goes right beside it. And that completes stage 28. Had a lot of fun assembling this, and we're slowly getting things together with this kit. I enjoyed it immensely. Welcome back. Let's look at the instructions for stage 29. And here are the instructions for stage 29. The left shoulder build continues. Here's all the parts that we received with this issue, and we have a total of 5 steps on the right. We've kind of done this already on one side, so it's a repeat of what we've already done, and looking great there. We have a total of 11 steps, so we actually have done this before. We're just repeating it for the other side. So let's get started. Here's the parts for step 29 as they are in the blister pack. And as before, we did the similar assembly. This is what it looks like. So I'll go ahead and take this out, and we will look at the parts. Here's a close-up of the parts, and we received the left shoulder plate, and that's made out of metal. We also received all the accessories for the left shoulder, all made of plastic, and we'll cut those off here in a little bit. And we received 3 by 6mm screws, and these are the PM screws, so we have a spare. I'll be right back. And the first 3 steps, we simply cut these off the sprue trees, which we did, and this is going to insert into that like that, and we will glue it down. And I'll be using my favorite super glue, the Gorilla Glue. You can find that on my Amazon store. I put a link in the description below. And I'll be using my glue looper to apply the glue. And that also can be found in the Amazon store. So it simply just inserts in there, just like that. And I have the parts lined up like in step 4, and they have them numbered out. 29.3 and 4, 29.6, 29.5, 29.2, and 29.7. They actually did A, B, C, D, and E with these, but for some reason they're not doing it that way this time, but it's going to be very similar to what we've already done before. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and orient it, make sure that this part here that sticks out on the sides is on the right. And we'll put our first piece on top, just kind of dry fit it there. And once again, we want to super glue all this. So we'll put some super glue in there. And that will go right there. First accessory. Our next one goes over here on the side here, and we need to super glue it also. And it simply slots in there just like that. Next one's going to go on the bottom. And that will slot in just like that. And we got one more, goes in on the side there. Actually, we got two more. Getting a lot of winds today. I don't know if you can hear it, but we've got a lot of winds outside, kind of unusual for us here in Arizona. Slot this one in. Okay, looks like it goes in one way. And last but not least, we got one more. Goes in on top here. And that's going to slot in up there. Just like that. And there they all are. Alright, we're going to go ahead and put our cap on the end here. We want to make sure that everything is oriented like it should be, with those screws being horizontal just like before. Make sure our cap, the round part here on the end, matches the round part on there. It's going to go down just like on that. Now we want to make sure we put our spring in, so we'll put our spring in here. It gets inserted in there just like that. And I want to make sure, I know I'm going to have problems with these screws, they are threaded, but I want to go ahead and Vaseline them up a little bit. It'll help our screws out because we're working against the pressure of the spring. Just makes it easier, even though, like I said, it is threaded. And I will go ahead and line this up just as we did before. Press that down, make sure all our screws line up, and they do. And we'll get the first one started here. That went in really good. And do the next one here. Good. And last one. Perfect. And that's how that looks. Looks great. And there you have it. That completes stage 29. Welcome back. Let's look at the final stage for Pack 3, and that would be stage 30. Let's look at the instructions. And there's the parts on the left for stage 30. We'll extend the left shoulder. And looks like we have a total of 3 steps on this page here. And then finally we have a total of 5 steps. Just a little bit to do here. So let me get the parts out and I'll be right back. Here's the parts for stage 30 inside the blister pack. And this will complete our pack number 3. So stage 30 should be pretty cool to do. Big accomplishment there. So let me take these out and we'll get a closer look. Here's the parts for stage 30. We received the left shoulder part itself. This is made out of metal. Very similar to the other side on the right side. This is the left shoulder. And we received the left shoulder accessory. That's plastic. And 3 screws. They are the 3x8 PM screws. I will be right back. Step 1, we attach the accessory on the back side of the left shoulder, and just like before, we're going to glue it down. It's going to go down right here on that. And my favorite glue is the Gorilla Glue Super Glue. Love that stuff. and I will be using my glue looper tool. You can find both of those in my Amazon store. So I'm just going to spread out the glue, especially in the hole here. And we will lay our accessory down just like that. That should dry up, but I can go ahead and take some super glue accelerator and spray it on there, and it should find its way, capillary action underneath, and dry it even faster for us. And lastly, we take our shoulder plate here, we line it up with the alignment pin there on top, and we got 2 holes there that it goes onto. We're simply going to put 2 screws into this. You can just see inside there, and it'll be hard for you to see it on camera, but I'm simply screwing in 2 screws that go inside there. There's one. See the other hole there? Got one more to do. And goes right on in because it's already threaded. Pretty cool. And there it is. That is it. That's all we do for stage 30. This was a lot of fun, building all 10 stages that came with pack 3. I enjoyed it very much. So stay tuned. I'm going to pull out all the parts and we'll see how far we've come along. I will be right back. And there you have it. Here's all the parts that we have assembled in packs 1, 2, and 3. We have a lot done here. We have the left arm. Fantastic. Fully articulated, moves. We saw that in the previous video. We have the, looks like the right shoulder, the left shoulder, and the head and neck. Got a lot done here so far. It's fantastic. So like I was saying, if you haven't done so already, head over to Agora Models and subscribe to this today. It's a fantastic kit. It's huge. You can see how it compares to my hand, the size of these parts. Half-scale Terminator T-800. It's fantastic. Moving parts, lighted up eyes, all that stuff. It's going to be fantastic. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel. Hit the bell for all notifications. Happy modeling, everybody, and take care.